Thank you, members. It's the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. This is a public hearing of the Food Safety and Environmental Hygiene panel. There is only one item: implementation of the Private Columbaria Ordinance policy initiatives related to land premium and traffic impact assessment issues of pre-cut of Columbaria. Well, there is another one. That is the any other business. On the 12th of December 2017, there was a panel meeting. The administration outlined the implementation of the ordinance, including matters related to the appeals board. Members agree that a public hearing be conducted in relation to the two matters relating to the implementation of the ordinance, i.e. land premium and traffic impact assessment. There are two papers issued. They are the administration's paper of the progress report as well as the background brief. Each deputation or individual will have 3 minutes. We have not received any written submissions. If you have any, please give it to us after the meeting. And you will find in front of you an earpiece of Channel 0 is the floor, 1 is Cantonese, 2 is English, 3 is Mandarin. Please use it if you need it. May I remind you that whatever you say here is not protected by the LegCo Powers and Privileges Ordinance, Cap 382. The submissions you give to us is not protected in a similar way. Please pay attention to the various security measures set out in a points to note to members attending public hearings or listening to meetings in a public gallery. You'll find a copy attached to the letter sent to you, and there is also one in front of you. If need be, you can get a copy from security staff here. Let's first hear from the Secretary. Well, since the implementation of the Private Columbaria Ordinance last month, it's been so far about a month. We have been dealing with a lot of applications. So far there are 143 private columbaria that have submitted applications for specified instruments. We will vet the applications considering various factors, namely fire safety, land, and buildings. We will vet these applications vigorously. We're here today to listen to members' views. Thank you. First, the Civic Party is not here, neither is the Labour Party. Mr. Wu Chek-him from the DAB, 3 minutes. Thank you. In November last year, the government announced the two application measures related to the ordinance. Well, the pre-cut-off requirement has been expanded from those before 1990 to those before 2014. This is our view. First, in relation to the formulation of the new ordinance, the government knew back then that there should be a lax approach. Otherwise, it will cause a large-scale closure of columbaria after the enactment of the ordinance. And they try to cushion the impact on consumers. But there are some new columbaria that are quite new and they are very close to residential areas. The administration should explain to us why they relax the criteria.
The deadline for application for private columbarium lapsed on the 29th of March, and 144 columbaria filed applications, and only 1/3 of the columbaria would be licensed while the rest might go out of business. From the consumer's perspective, the government should come up with a plan for these columbaria that are closing down, and that would and they should also protect the interests of consumers and help them with compensation issues. And the regime to regulate private columbaria is a new regime, and it is not easy to tackle a host of long-standing issues, and it is important to strike a balance. We hope that the Private Columbaria Licensing Board would enforce the regulations, including vetting the management plans submitted and traffic plans submitted by the private columbarium, and they must also listen to the public. In the interest of the public, nuisance caused by private columbaria should be minimized. Thank you. And deputations who are late would have to go last based on our established procedures. Mr. Ho Wai Hong from the Labour Party. The Private Columbaria Ordinance came into force last June. So it helped regulate unregulated private columbaria despite certain deficiencies in the ordinance. Unfortunately, last November, the Executive and Council offered exemptions to certain private columbaria, especially the pre-cut-off columbaria before 2014, which received land premium exemption. We express regret on this decision. When these columbaria were built in 2005 or after 2005, they aim to achieve maximum profit, and a niche which is very small in size can cost $200,000, and we express our dissatisfaction over the situation. Land premium is an essential part of the arrangement. Very often people would talk about columbaria in Hong Kong, but in places like Lo Ai, Sha Tin, Tuen Mun, and Tsuen Wan, etc., many residents are being bothered, and we are not just talking about the grave sweeping festivals at Lo Ai, Tsuen Wan. We would often choose to worship our ancestors before or after the Qingming festival. So did the government consider this situation? Did the government carry out any traffic assessments in the past weeks? The government said they would not collude with or be biased towards certain operators. You said you are to tackle long-standing issues, but have you thought about any refund arrangements? If part of our golf course can be converted into columbaria, we can effectively half or cut the waiting time. So in terms, you are only offering exemptions for land premium and traffic impact assessments. I do not understand why we have an open hearing today, because it's rather pointless to have an open hearing after the ordinance was enacted. We have been asking for regulation on private columbaria, and we want to eliminate contravening columbaria. But all along, the government has been biased towards developers, and now they are offering exemptions on land premium and traffic assessments. So obviously the government is biased towards unregulated or contravening Columbaria, and we are extremely angry and regretful about the situation. In 2010, the Development Bureau came up with a list asking consumers to choose niches carefully or Columbaria carefully, but for those who listen to the government, they might be fooled. Some Columbaria might be able to secure a license due to the relaxations, and consumers might be able to buy niches at cheaper prices. So where is the integrity of the government or reliability? In terms of the land premium exemption, there were exemptions given to certain premises, and according to the paper, at cut-off time, there was a certain number of Columbaria, but they were unable to verify their claims. In other words, they lied. And the government could not handle the situation, and as such, they offered 2 exemptions. So is this really right? In terms of the land premium exemption, we request the Food and Health Bureau and other departments in the future, they should calculate the premium exemption value so that the public knows how much they are paying out of their own pocket. So are you going to charge rents even if you waive the premium? And in terms of the traffic impact assessment, many Columbaria have uninterred ashes, and the government has been ignoring the needs of the public. So these exemptions are actually bothering the public. Ms. Ho Hang Yu. After the Private Columbaria Ordinance was enacted, the government stipulated that pre-cut-off Columbaria would be exempted from paying land premium and conducting traffic impact assessments. This is certainly regretful. Why weren't these exemptions mentioned when the bill was scrutinized? So apparently LegCo was deceived. For existing private Columbaria, if they are not required to conduct TIA, that would create much nuisance to the residents. During the grave sweeping festivals, there would be a lot of people and cars, which lead to congestion, and that in turn would affect the residents. If private Columbaria are not required to pay land premium, people would have the impression that the government is going easy on all private Columbaria, and the public would feel that there's collusion between the government and Columbaria operators, and that would also substantially affect or put a strain on public money. When licenses are issued, operators should be asked to pay premium. And in terms of issuing licenses, the licensing board should consult residents living near Columbaria, and they should also listen to them. That way, when the Columbaria begin operation, the impacts on the residents can be minimized. Will the private Columbaria be required to pay rates and rents if they are located in the new territories? I would like to know the government's views on this. Next, Madam Siu Xiaoping. Thank you. I'm a Tuen Mun resident, and LegCo implemented 2 measures, including premium waivers for private columbaria as well as waiver on TIA. We are extremely unhappy. Last year, we applied to the licensing board for temporary suspension of liability if operators are not required to pay land premium. You would be going too easy on them. And yet I'm a resident of Parkland Villas, and during the grave sweeping festivals, there would be a lot of people and vehicular access would be affected. Columbaria are big business, and why aren't operators required to pay land premium? For Kiklok Temple, they make more than $200 million, and they are currently being held by another company, and all private columbaria operators would say that they have no money to pay for the land premium because all their income has been transferred to the mainland. This is just unfair. Hong Kong plays by the rule of law, and everyone should follow the law. For illegal columbaria like Kiklok Temple, their operators should be sent to jail. They should not be allowed to continue. We agree with the licensing regime, and the legislative intent is to drive out illegal columbaria and to prevent speculation. And the 2 concessions offered by the government are benefiting the illegal columbaria operators. So I'm against the 2 concessions. I'm also a resident of Parkland Villas in Tuen Mun, and across the street is Kiklok Temple. They have been occupying government land illegally for more than 10 years, and they make more than $200 million. And with constant complaints from residents 2 years ago, they agreed to return the government land while the illegal niches were moved into the main temple. They completely ignore the laws, and they have breached land use conditions. Their leases were suspended twice, and the suspension is still in force. Earlier, LegCo announced 2 new measures, including land premium waivers for private columbaria and the exemption of TIA for 60,000 niches. And I'd like to talk about the logic for such waivers. Tuen On Lane is the only access between Parkland Villas and Kiklok Temple. So before announcing the TIA exemption, did the government consider the actual situation and the needs of the residents? We have more than 1,800 units with more than 10,000 residents. Kiklok Temple has sold more than 1,000 niches, while we only have 4 to 5 parking lots. During the grave sweeping holidays, cars would be parked casually and illegally, and the residents' access are affected. In case of contingencies, even ambulances cannot come in. You can just refer to these photos. And TIA should be required no matter what in order to avoid accidents.
On a number of occasions, the temple made applications to the town planning board, and they were rejected. One of the reasons for the rejection was TIA. It was a cul-de-sac. If something happens, there is no way that people can be evacuated. LegCo members, what reasons do they have to have an across-the-board waiver of TIA? Are there any reasons? Has there been any declaration of interest? If the administration relaxed the approach in this way, in the end, the general public will stand to suffer. So I oppose to the waiving of the TIA. Thank you, Mr. Tam. I see that you have some photos. My suggestion is that you give them to us and we forward them to the administration. The Undersecretary may be wearing glasses, but they are not binoculars. Next, Mr. Lei Haoyan. Thank you. Please pause there. Phone's ringing. Please continue. Today is about the waiving of land premium as well as TIA report. Well, there are 3 officials from the government, and there are 2 people who are consultants. We have a lot of comments to make to the government. We have encountered problems when we make applications. And the most important area is traffic. There is no proper guideline from the Transport Department for Columbaria operators. That is the PCAO. That is the Private Columbaria Affairs Office. So we want to know how the applications are dealt with. First come, first serve, or there is a quota. And if there is a quota, how is it allocated? I think that will have a huge impact on the results of applications. I think most of the objectors object for the reasons of traffic. I think the waiving of land premium has been misunderstood. They thought that it is a kind of concession given to us. But if you want to enjoy the concession, you will have to meet very stringent requirements. If consultants can answer our questions about traffic, that is, how we can meet government requirements on maximum capacity. If you can explain to the public, I think it will dispel some concern. Next, Ms. Lei Manning. I would like to ask about the calculation of land premium payment. We are operators. We would like to know whether it depends on the cut-off day, the day when we're established, the day when they were sold, or at market value when the niches were sold, or any other methods. We do our best to meet the requirements. When the Lands Department received our application, will they immediately deal with them instead of sitting on them to wait for town planning approval? We want to serve the public as soon as possible. That's all. Next, Ms. Wang Leitou. When it comes to waiving of a TIA report and the estimated number of niches to be sold, there are 2 different licenses. And those that are sold before the 30th of June 2017, they will enjoy waiving of TIA report. The second category will be the others. If they want to be put on sale, then there needs to be a TIA. So when you issue us with license, how do you distinguish them? Because if without any distinction, consumers may be confused. Is it the case that one will be given Cat 1 license if they can get Cat 2 license? Would it be easier or more difficult? Next, Ms. Zhong Meiheng. Thank you. I want to know about payment of land premium. Is it based on each niche or the lot? If it is based on the lot, in the future, if there are other developments, will further land premium has to be paid? And if it's based on number of niches, well, what about those that ashes are not interred? Will they have to pay land premium as well? Two more. One, Mr. Michael Yong. If you ask me, I really don't know what we're here for. The ordinance and the waiving of land premium and TIA, a decision made by the LegCo, are the main problems for illegal columbaria. Because if you waive land premium, it will be unfair to legal operators. I don't know whether it's because illegal columbaria may close and there will be ashes everywhere, but nowhere to store them. Is it the reason why they've decided to waive land premium so that they can continue to operate? The Civic Party doesn't think it is fair. If there is no way for the operator to pay the land premium in a lump sum, does it mean that every year for rent and rates they will be charged a higher level to deal with the problem? If you can't come up with a problem in one go, you can pay by installment. It will be fair to legal operators. The second part, TIA, Traffic Impact Assessment. We have two traffic consultants here. Using Sha Tin as an example, Diane has been to Sha Tin District Council to explain about the columbarium in Shek Mun. There are a lot of illegal columbaria in Sha Tin. During Qingming and Chongyang festivals, I don't want to go to the district council because there will be serious traffic congestion and overcrowdedness of people. The only legal one is Po Fok Shan, and they want to add 18,000 niches. They have made all the applications and conducted TIAs, that is in relation to Po Fok Hills. But how do you deal with pedestrian flow as well as traffic circulation? The FEHD and the police should be consulted. Operators should submit a TIA to show that proper arrangements are in place before the applications are approved. Thank you. Next, Mr. Kwok Wing Kin. I apologize, I'm late because I had something else to do. The two relaxations, that is waiver of the land premium as well as the TIA, I see that the government has just retracted their words. A lot of columbaria can't pass the TIA and they have already sold a lot of niches. Don't forget that these operators have made profits of tens of $millions. Why would you give them a way out? The government said that, well, this should come to a close and we should look forward. But if you waive them of the land premium, then it gives out the wrong signal. This time they are illegal operators of columbaria. In the future, it may be something else. people will try to make the maximum amount of a profit by breaking the law, and then they will force you into a situation where you will have to relax legal requirements so that they can continue to make profits. So when it comes to the waiver of land premium, well, you allow them to make use of government land as well as green belt to make money. Shouldn't they pay the cost? The second part is the TIA. According to the government, during the Chongyang and Qingming Festival, there are only 2 weekends. The impact on the general public is insignificant. But have government officials actually been there? Say, for example, for a typo, Columbarium in Ma Wo Road, there is only one roundabout. It's a dual carriageway. During Qingming and Chongyang Festival, there is serious traffic congestion. There are also coaches parked by the road. In the past decade or so, it has caused a lot of inconvenience to villagers. We said to villagers that we hope the ordinance will be passed as soon as possible, because the problem will be resolved. But now it has happened. But with the relaxation, the expectations of the villagers have been that the problem will be resolved, disappear. Thank you. Those who have attended have spoken. Well, we have already explained why this public hearing takes place now. Back in December, there was a suggestion of a public hearing. But if we had a public hearing, then it would be in the middle of the application period. The government will not have comprehensive figures to show information about land premium. Now, the public hearing takes place after the government has compiled statistics. We have already tried our best, please understand. Now I'll give the floor to the administration to reply, and I'll also they will also explain to members about issues they've raised before. In relation to the 143 applications that have been dealt with by the licensing authority, as I said, they have to look into fire safety, traffic management, lands, and planning. They will have to go through the process before they decide whether the application will be approved. Of course, there is time for people who are affected to speak. And I will defer to Ms. Wong to answer questions asked by deputations and individuals. Ms. Wong, thank you. As the chairman explained, that the reason why the public hearing takes place, the 29th of March is the deadline for submission of applications for specified instruments. Safe and except one operators, so far there are 140 operators that have 140 columbaria that have submitted applications. I'll now give a consolidated reply. When the policy is implemented, we will do it from the perspective of the overall interest of society. We will be as pragmatic and as understanding as possible.
We hope to help the consumers and the and those with interred ashes for their family members, and hopefully they won't have to relocate the ashes. I stress that the policies would not mean that all pre-cut-off columbaria would receive licenses. They still need to undergo stringent criteria, and the licensing board would vet every application in line with the procedures. Therefore, there is no relaxation of the regulations. The Town Planning Board and Licensing Board are independent statutory bodies, and they would vet the applications based on the established rules. The two arrangements we measured are administrative in nature, and in terms of land premium, the application for waiving of payments for regularization would undergo a strict process. They must be pre-cut-off columbaria, and they must fulfill the relevant guidelines. When you look at the guidelines, they have to. You can see that they will have to fulfill almost 20 criteria, which is not easy. For every waiver application, with policy backing, applications would only be considered on a case-by-case basis. That said, we also provide for some safeguards for customers. For instance, operators cannot impose extra charges after agreements were signed before the 18th of June 2014. As you know, that many pre-cut-off columbaria have been in operation in the community for a long time, and during the Chongyang and Qingming festivals, there would be certain impacts on traffic. In the past, the government would take out certain traffic measures such as road closure in order to mitigate the impacts. After consideration, if we only consider the number of sold niches by the 30th of June 2017, the traffic impact would be acceptable. That said, operators must propose viable mitigation measures to minimize the impacts or nuisance on residents. The licensing board requires some data on the flow of people and traffic, and the relevant government departments would look at the management plan submitted and make recommendations accordingly. We adopt an empirical evidence approach for addressing traffic impacts. So we have assessed the situation of pre-cut-off columbaria, whose operation only involves niches sold before the 30th of June 2017. As for the issue of land premium and TIA, for land premium, even for pre-cut-off columbaria, for post-cut-off sold niches, they still need to pay the full market value premium. As Mr. Lai said, I'd like to talk about the TIA. For subsequent niches, TIA must be conducted. And the TIA would proceed in phases as the situation dictates. So this is still the TIA mechanism we are looking at. So for subsequent niches or columbaria, you would have to look at the subsequent projects approved by the Town Planning Board and propose mitigation or traffic mitigation measures. Some deputations asked whether the government is going easy in order to increase the supply of niches in the short to medium term. We have always adopted a three-pillar approach. Apart from private columbaria, we are also working hard on public columbaria, and 14 projects have already received district council support, and we can provide more than 590,000 niches. And we are also looking at the issue of renewability. Another pillar is green burial. This is something we are promoting actively. We would work with other government departments to promote green burial, and hopefully it will be accepted by the public. Anything to add from the Secretary? The floor is now open to questions. Mr. Ray Chan and Mr. Kwai Kang. Since we have ample time, 5 minutes including question and answer. Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the deputations for being here. I think we have all heard from the affected deputations and individuals. They have very strong views on the two new arrangements. The government must explain clearly to the public. Once again, they offered an explanation before, but it was not acceptable for the public. First of all, the bill should have been passed before the LegCo general election in 2016, and the bill was only passed in 2017. The public hoped that the bill would be passed as soon as possible. So when did you come up with these two proposals? Did you come up with these arrangements after the bill was passed, or whether you had those in mind all along, but you chose not to mention them, or else if these arrangements had to be discussed when the bill was scrutinized, it would drag on for another year or two. That's why you chose not to mention them. I think such suspicion is reasonable. As for the payment of land premium, the government said they cannot impose any charges on the consumers beyond the scope of the agreements. But if you tell the consumers that the agreements have included land premium, so now operators are not required to pay premium. Should they be asked to refund to consumers, or can the consumers take civil action to recover that portion of the fees paid, for example, by recovering 30%? For pre-cut-off sold niches, so the government said that they have existed a long time ago. So does it mean that all long-standing columbaria would benefit? You talked about uninterred ashes. You cannot assess the real impacts on our society. If this is the case, operators would only have to submit traffic and flow data without having to conduct TIA. You have to be fair to all operators. Thank you very much. As you know, the two new measures are administrative in measure not involving any funding or legislative proposal. In the LegCo brief, we have explained the arrangements. When we had discussions at the Bills Committee, '87 Columbaria could receive waivers, but as we dealt with the relevant cases, some Columbaria failed to produce proper proof. So 59 Columbaria failed to produce the proof. And as such, the community agreed that we should adopt a sympathetic and pragmatic approach. And for consumers, they would not understand why the results for the application for licenses or other instruments would be different. So the government considered waivers for pre-cut-off Columbaria. In order to be eligible, they must be pre-cut-off Columbaria and they must fulfill all the licensing requirements. And there are close to 20 criteria. If there are illegal structures, they must be dealt with. And that means operators would have to spend some money. As for consumers, depending on their contracts with the operators, if they feel that they have the grounds, they can take legal action. Since more members are waiting to speak, I might only allow 5 minutes for the first round. And I'd like to read out the names: Mr. Kwai Kang, Mr. Leung Chi-Chang, Ms. Alice Mack. Does anyone else wish to speak? So that's all for the first round. So we now hand the floor back to the deputations. Mr. Yam Kok Tong, 3 minutes. I have a question for the Food and Health Bureau. Excuse me for being late. Based on the past papers, you drew a line at 1990, and in 1990 there were about 80 Columbaria. For CB Records 2 462 Records 03, 43 are not pre-1990 Columbaria. If the government cites some long-standing Columbaria, that is Columbaria that opened before 1990, that would make sense. But the arrangements you introduced last November allowed waivers for a further 44 Columbaria. So I'd like to know why you introduced such arrangement. The NGOs like us ask how much public money would be spent with your waiving arrangements. So you should assume that all these private Columbaria would lodge applications and come up with estimates. The deadline of 29th of March lapsed already, and on your website we can see how many Columbaria have applied for the TSOL. Can you, well, we cannot see the documents submitted by Columbaria operators. So can you tell us how many Columbaria operators or temples have applied for the waivers? Thank you.
咁啊，公眾人士都講。
Government officials don't need to reply yet. We will wait for all members to speak first. Sorry, we can't have a second round. We can't give a second round to the public because even if I give you 1 minute each, it will use 30 minutes. If you have any other views, give it to us in written form. Sorry, speakers off mic. I do understand, but we have to be fair. You already had 3 minutes, and I already said that you can give us your written submission. I'm trying to conduct the meeting in a smooth way. Members of the public, you need to understand. Members off mic. Sorry. Sorry, speaker is off mic. Sorry, speaker is off mic. So this is our procedure. That is my ruling as chair. Please, speakers off mic, you have to abide by the rules. Calm down, please.
一個主席權力，我係未容許你發言咧，請各位暫時稍安毋躁。其實
Please remain calm. Members may speak or they may give you their time, but I can't give you a second round. That is the procedure. Members, if you would like, you can give your time to members of the public. Mr. Eddie Chu, point of order. Please be quick. Yes. Previously, there was an occasion to ask deputations or individuals if they would like to speak again. If the number is small, you can exercise discretion. Well, but we can't allow that yet. Members haven't asked questions yet. Let's finish all the questions from members yet. I can't promise that I can give time to him. Next, Mr. Ko Kwai Kau, 5 minutes. Thank you. And I thank all deputations and individuals who have come. I understand you came well prepared, you came here to register early, but basically in a public hearing, one is allowed 3 minutes only. That may not be enough. You can't force the chairman to give you more time. Please do not interrupt. If you don't understand rules, you will have to learn again. I am very concerned about pedestrian as well as visitors as well as traffic arrangement. TIA is not a statutory requirement, but we see that there is an over-concentration of niches. They have generated traffic as well as visitors. It has caused inconvenience. In Taiwan, there was a case when an industrial building has been converted into a columbarium. The application was rejected because of traffic impact. Well, currently, traffic impact assessment is done at junctions near Columbaria, but there are some other junctions further away that may create a bottleneck. In the future, if there are traffic congestions, what can the department or the administration do? I see that, well, there are quite a large number of temporary storage niches made available, but there are only about 1,000 or so. It says that there will be an increase from 28,000 to about 68,000. Is it confirmed? Will it be insufficient in the end? Ms. Wong, thank you. Mr. Yam raised 2 points. The initial assessment was 87, out of which 59 cannot provide evidence because it was so long ago. And they were not the 44 that operated before 1990. You need to understand that we have to be fair. For the 59 of Columbaria, if they can't prove that they existed before 1990, then they are no different from the others. If we relax them, the requirement, then we will have to consider whether we should do the same for the others. And the land premium. Calculation of land premium is done by professional. We will have to look at the original land use, the location, number of niches, and the amount of premium to be paid. So we can't give you specific figures in relation to the relaxation. We'll have to wait till everything is completed. Mr. Kwok mentioned about an assessment. Sorry, let me start again. For the TIA, government department has actually gone to the site for an inspection on the 30th of June 2017, and they found that it is an acceptable level. The licensing authority will ask columbarium operators to put in place management plans as well as traffic arrangements to deal with traffic problems. Temporary storage service, perhaps I can have a bit more time. We may have 28,000 spaces, but only 1,100 of them are in use. Well, you can't actually go there to pay homage. On the 28th of March, in reply to media inquiries, we already said that well, people can go to nearby Columbaria to pay homage, and there is also a proposed information kiosk. They can make use of scanners or input the number of the niche to retrieve the niche for them to pay homage. They can use QR code, or they can actually input the number. Then the information will be displayed. If it is confirmed, then the memorial plaque will be retrieved. 68,000 will be made available over 2 years' time. People whose families' ashes have been displaced, if necessary, can use these temporary service. Next, Mr. Leung Chee Chung. Thank you. I've read the administration's paper. 359 applications. 67 of them are for exemptions. A lot of people have spoken about the 67 applications. First of all, I'd like to know that you still have to compile statistics. After everything's done, will you announce the operator of these 67 applications and the reasons for granting the exemptions? Well, where there are exemptions, there is public interest involved, and you need to give us the reasons why you give them the exemption. You said that it's a case-by-case basis. If in the future they want to increase the number of niches, does it mean that they have to conduct a TIA or pay land premium? Say at the moment there are 1,500 and they want to double it. Do you require them to make an application afresh? It will be fair if that is the case. Otherwise, people will have the impression that you just want to resolve the problem. If I heard you right, you said it is reality. Because if you don't do it, then a lot of these columbaria will close and a lot of ashes will be displaced. But I don't want the regulation to become transfer of interests. There are two cases I heard recently on islands. Before the cut-off day, they have used a lot of ashes, genuine or not, to make up the count, to make it out that they are existing columbaria. This is to force the hands of the town planning to approve the application. But have you actually verified the information to check whether they are genuine columbaria? The 67 applications in respect of exemptions, it will have to be some columbaria that has been operating before the 1st of January 1990 and after 8 a.m. on the 18th of June 2014 they can't sell any more niches. That means from 2014 to 30th of June 2017 the number will remain the same. If in the future they want to increase the number of niches, then they have to conduct TIA. For the cases on islands, well, they just put some ashes there and say that they are pre-cut-off columbaria. Well, there is complaint mechanism and we will conduct investigation. And I'd like to say that under section 99, furnishing false information may attract imprisonment and a fine. This will affect the future and any future application of specified instrument. If someone engages in fraud causing the government loss, it's an imprisonment of 14 months under the common law system. Ms. Alice Mack.
Chairman, first of all, I'd like to thank the deputations for coming here. We have a lot of concerns over the waivers and the relevant criteria. And apparently you are allowing the improper operators to continue, and this is something I have said before. For operators who are following the rules, they have to pay the premium, and this is unfair on them. And this is also unfair on consumers who buy from proper operators. And they see that the improper operators are enjoying waivers. This is a very wrong message you are sending to the people. Basically, you are saying that even if you follow the rules, even if you have something on hand, the government would be forced to offer waivers, and there might be more of the same in the future. You are saying that the waivers are administrative arrangements, that's why you don't have to go through LegCo. That after you implement these arrangements, we are looking at dozens of applications. If you indeed offer the waivers, you must tell the public what the criteria are, and you must promise not to offer further waivers in the future. Or else all the operators would wait for the government to offer more waivers because they hold all the ashes. And this is unfair on proper operators and consumers who sign agreements with these proper operators. And I'd like you to talk about the calculation of premium waivers as well. So you should update us on the information as soon as possible. The land premium waiver would sacrifice public money. And the exemption of TIA is another cause of concern for the public. I read one of the emails sent in by a member of the public, and the email was in English, and he said the waiver is not sustainable. Now you are waiving the TIA requirement, so how would operators put their heart in tackling traffic and environmental issues? So after they are licensed, they would not care anymore. So if people complain about coaches or congestion, there is nothing you can do with the operators because there is no incentive for them to do anything. Secretary, the second question is rather important. Ms. Wong. As we scrutinize the bill, we understood that nothing is perfect, so we would adopt a pragmatic approach. We hope that the community understands that we are thinking about the overall interests of the society as well as consumers. And the operators have to be pre-cut-off columbaria, fulfilling more than 10 requirements on building safety, fire safety, etc. And applications would only be considered case by case. I realize that some operators are playing by the rules, and in our LegCo brief, we propose a phased approach in the land premium waiver, and hopefully this can help the proper operators. In terms of traffic impact, we understand that there are certain concerns, and we have completed our counting survey. In the English written submission, we have read it. When you look at the guidelines of the licensing board, they require the columbarium to submit a financial plan in order to convince that they are financially sustainable in the long term. As for the management plan and licensing conditions or criteria, they must be fulfilled, or else enforcement notices can be issued, and the specified instruments might also be affected. In the scrutiny of the bill, the licensing board was empowered to make investigations. So in recent months, we dealt with a number of complaints at the Private Columbaria Affairs Office, and they make sure that the management plans would be followed. I am next in line, but I would first invite members to speak for the second round. Mr. Edward Lau and Dr. K. Kwok for the second round. Ms. Asmack, Ms. Eunice Yong, five including myself. Ms. Edward Lau. Thank you. 4 minutes each, please. Thank you. The government's waiving arrangement proved some of our earlier concerns, and that is some contravening columbaria might try to create certain conditions in order to pressure the government, and the government is saying that they are protecting the consumers, and they are reluctantly offering the waivers. And the illegal columbaria operators know these very well. By creating certain conditions, they can force the government into a corner. And the government said that the waivers are based on the condition that the operator is licensed. You are offering waivers in the name of protecting consumers. So during the licensing stage, are you going to adopt the same approach? And this is a great concern, because the licensing board might adopt the same approach, and the customers might suffer losses, and the arrangement for many of the niches might be in a chaos. Licensing board members, well, the licensing board is composed of different sectors, for example, legal, commerce, accounting, etc. And I trust that they would conduct fair assessments according to the law. And after that, they would deal with the issue of land premium waiver. As for TIA, as Ms. Wong said, Secretary, I did not ask about traffic, so there's no need to read from the paper. Can you repeat your question? You are now offering waivers, and if the operators fail to be licensed, when would you carry out enforcement work against them? For unlicensed columbaria, would you publish a list of names? Ms. Wang. As we said right from the start, we are not relaxing any legal requirements. The Town Planning Board and Private Columbaria Licensing Board are independent statutory bodies in vetting the applications. As for making the list of cases public for applicants whose TSOL or specified instrument applications are rejected, the list would be published so the public would know whether the columbaria have failed the applications. A lot of Hong Kong residents are concerned about this issue. After the bill was passed, the PCAO made 530 inspections, and in early March, we made one arrest in Hong Kong. And since there was a process of gathering evidence and discussing with the DOJ, these cases would require some time, but the PCAO is following up on these cases. Dr. Gay Kwok, 4 minutes. I'd like to thank the deputations for coming. I understand their rage because since 2014, the government never said anything about waiving the TIA requirement or land premium, and they have been deceiving LegCo. The government refused to come up with the math. We have up to 300,000 private niches, and at $100,000 each, this amounts to $30 billion. And residents are suffering because of Columbaria like Kicklock, Temple, Zhonghua, Jingzhe, etc. And this is thanks to a lack of enforcement from the government. And the government is now setting a precedent that they would ignore contraventions so long as you have sold the niches before the cutoff time, you would never have to pay land premium. So you are telling a criminal that if you conducted crime before a certain time, you would be let go. So this is a waste of government resources. If you deem these operators illegal, you should have a very good idea what they are doing. So did you carry out any consultation before you decided to waive the land premium? If the government adopts such principles, since the damage has been done, and since they sold 3,000 already, we would why don't we allow them to sell 30,000 more? So you are setting a very poor precedent, and you are encouraging people to conduct crimes as early as possible, because after a certain cutoff time, they would not be held culpable. Within the 144 applications, many of them, or the 144 private columbaria, many of them are nuisance to residents. For the fly-by-night columbaria, they are not held liable. So how can you make sure that they will fulfill their responsibilities? Apparently, a wall would cost $300 million, and at some temples, the situation is appalling. And at a temple in Xunwan, the owner or person in charge is alleged to be offering private niches. So the government has been sending a very wrong message. So does the government feel any disgrace? So have you ever apologized to the affected residents? The government, well, the customers expected help from the government, but they have been deceived.
係，多謝主席。嗱，頭先我
PAS. Well, as I've said that we have not worked out the land premium yet. Sorry, we haven't. Well, if it is every 100,000, we have over 100,000 niches. That means over 100,000 consumers will be affected. We always do things from the perspective of consumers and members of the public. In order to meet licensing requirements, they will have to spend a lot of money to do a lot of work. They will have to regularize all their practices. They have to ensure building safety. They have to meet all requirements before they can make an application for having the land premium waived. We fully understand how residents feel. We try to require operators to put in place mitigation measures. Please be quick. The member mentioned about residents or consumers. Well, if payment has been made and the columbarium closes, consumer may claim for damages. We've always asked consumers to exercise caution and care, and to read the terms of transaction. Consumers still have ways to claim damages and compensation. What about those that are illegal, that are taking up government land? Well, you have to reply by in written form. We have Eunice Young, Alice Mack, and I myself. I will have 2 rounds. First, Miss Young. She's not here. Miss Alice Mack. The PAS did not answer my question. I was talking about traffic. You said you would actively deal with the complaints, but you have already given a license or the exemption. You have already given them the exemption, so they can say whatever they want. And if they have been granted a license, well, someone wrote an email to me saying that, well, they have paid for the niches, and the columbarium operator doesn't have to pay heed to your advice. They have already sold all the niches. If you don't give them the license, it wouldn't hurt them. The PAS said in passing about this, well, the reason why you waive land premium is because some operators told them that there is always a high land price policy for the dead and the living. So businessmen doing business legally will have to make huge payment for land premium. For unscrupulous businessmen, they break the law, they don't have to pay premium. So, you have any latest information to give us about charging them land premium by installment? And should you review the high land price policy for the living and the dead? People can say to you that they have difficulty paying land premium, so they ask for an exemption. I find that quite ridiculous. I'm the Secretary or PAS. For the management plan and the licensing conditions, well, the application will be circulated amongst different departments. For consultation, they will give their comments. If in the future the conditions are not complied with, there can be enforcement notice, there can be a suspension of license or revocation of the specified instrument. So there are penalties. People are concerned that If the niches are sold, then they can simply fly by night. We will require operators to put in place management plans to convince the public that they can continue to operate. For compliant operators, in the LegCo brief, you'll find information in this regard. Well, there are phase development and land premium payment by phases. We will work out the details. Once we have any updates, we will revert to you. Next is I myself. I will also save some time for Ms. Eunice Young. I have to make a ruling first. Deputations and individuals who would like to speak again. 4. Please be patient. After I have finished delivering my ruling, I will allow you to speak. When you came, you accept the terms that you would have 3 minutes. If I give you more rounds, it will affect people who have come here and left. So there won't be a second round. I'd rather you use my speaking time. I have 9 minutes. I will use my 9 minutes to give to deputations and individuals to speak. In this way, I won't violate the rules. 1 minute each. Mr. Michael Young, 謝世傑, 何幸梅, and 任國棟. Mr. Michael Young. I have been listening for a very long time. Even though I've come and gone. When it comes to the relaxed approach of waiving land premium and TIA, I think it is problematic. Well, can't they be charged a higher rate and rent to balance it out? If you don't require TIA or at least a traffic review for the numerous columbaria, you actually tell the public that you let them operate legally, but you don't require them to make sure that traffic has improved. Mr. Jie, do you have anything to say? I agree with what the other person has said. There is no transparency when it comes to information. What is the scale of operation for these operators? The public can't monitor them, so please disseminate the information. There is an office, PACO, PACO, but we always ask for the office to come to listen to the views of the public. The PCAO, the Private Columbaria Affairs Office, but our requests have been rejected. So we would like to know that, well, you have got funding for the operation of the Private Columbaria Affairs Office. Well, how do you ensure that they listen to views? I find that near some illegal columbaria there are CCTVs installed. I don't know whether they're installed by the Affairs Office to assess number of visitors. If that is the case, I can tell you that it is not accurate, because there are a lot of soul niches that have not had ashes interred. So if you use that information for your assessment, it will be incorrect. Applicants at the time of application will have to submit a traffic management plan. Once they've got an approval, then they don't care about it anymore. So how do you ensure that the traffic will be properly managed? If there are contraventions, are there penalties? How do you deal with traffic congestions? I'm very worried. That's why we oppose that pre-cut-off Columbaria will be waived TIA. Mr. Yam Kwok Dong. Thank you. I agree with what the others have said in relation to TIA. If you look at the photos from the emails, you have received an email with photographs of Qingming Festival. You can see that for existing temples, they have generated traffic nuisance to residents. That is the same for Kik Lok Temple. I see that for the Affairs Office, well, in relation to applications for specified instrument before 29th of March 18, well, I see that for number 86 and 87, Zhensing Doutong. In August 2010, it was Chatham Road North number 228. They have used a funeral home to apply for a license. But that was the 2010. I don't understand that for why you would allow the application 220 and 224 for the temporary suspension of liability. This is not just a contravention of licensing condition of a funeral undertakers. It's they should not be allowed to make an application. I ask you to understand the difficulties our panels face. I hope that you won't expect us to break the rules. I still have 5 minutes. I do understand that this private columbaria issue is complicated and difficult. We face tremendous pressure from 3 fronts: residents, because their lives will be affected; families of people with their ashes interred, or those that have not been interred; if there are ashes interred, then you have to find a place to store them. The third front is columbarium operators. We have read a lot from the press, illegal operators or unscrupulous ones involved in trying to make huge profits. But there are some operators who conduct the business for the benefit of the public. It is very difficult. No matter how we proceed, there will be impact on different people. If it's too relaxed, there may be accusations of the business sector colluding with the government. If it's too tight, then it will have a huge impact on the business environment as well as consumers. So how do you set the criteria? Please explain to the public again. And I agree with what Ms. Alice Mack said. Once you have submitted a TIA report, how can you ensure that they will do what they said? Are they going to charge management fees? Well, if they charge it, then if consumers don't pay, there is nothing operators can do.
出現。
This might not happen in the first few years, but 10 or 20 years later, there would be issues. You offered some justifications. And for the TIA requested, you would assume that all the niches are sold, but now the situation is the public does not trust the TIA reports. So it's about enhancing the credibility of the TIAs. So if the public does not trust the TIAs, they would not be convincing. The information we announce in the we publish in the tables include applications received. The assessments are yet to be completed, and we are waiting for further information from the applicants. So this is simply a list of applications. Ms. Wong, thank you very much. I agree with the chairman that we have to strike a balance because we have different stakeholders, including operators, consumers, surrounding residents, and different stakeholders. We call for everyone's understanding, and we hope to come up with justified and reasonable decisions. First of all, on the issue of rates and rents, if land leases are in place, they have to pay rates and rents. But on the before value and after value, for the payments of regularization, land premium would be involved. For rates and rent, the original arrangements would remain in place. As for the availability of information, we are still waiting for the information to arrive. There is a gist containing information on the number of niches, the number of internal niches or sold niches. Once the information is available, they would be published. Some people ask whether government officials would attend certain occasions to answer questions. We have the ordinance and the mechanism in place. And if there are views on the applications, details would be submitted to the licensing board. And it might not be appropriate to comment on specific cases openly. As for the CCTVs, they are installed by the Food and Health Bureau, but not the licensing board. You are not answering my questions. As for payments from consumers, perhaps I would address your other questions first. When you look at the guidelines published by the licensing board, of course, some operators and consumers prefer one-off payments, but we would recommend payment in phases. And this would ensure consumer rights and the sustainability for operators. So this is an option we hope they will take on board. As for the traffic impact assessments, I realize that a lot of people are concerned. That is why we commission a consultancy. We are talking about data at road junctions and number of people. So these raw data would be published later. The town planning board, operators, consumers, and residents can all make use of these data. Of course, these raw data must be processed. If you are to calculate the VC ratio or LS, I think people like Mr. Michael Young would know what I'm talking about. You would have to measure the width of the roads and come up with data. And that would facilitate further discussions. The Food and Health Bureau commissioned a consultancy. Neither ourselves or the consultancy have any fixed stance, and we are just collecting raw data. So in the first Qingming Festival, the data obtained can lay the foundation for more discussions. Some people are worried that licensed columbaria would not care anymore, and how can we ensure that the licensing criteria are being followed? As I said, we can issue enforcement notices or temporarily revoke the licenses or revocation of specified instruments, etc. So there are many ways to sanction operators. Mr. Yam mentioned a case of a bureau operator. Why did they apply for a columbarium license? But the fact is, it doesn't mean we would necessarily approve the application. And the government departments would consider the case as well as the licensing board, but it doesn't mean that the application would always be approved. We have drawn the line today, so we cannot allow more time for members. I cannot provide equal speaking time, but I would at least provide equal opportunities for speaking. So if you would, so I'd like to thank all the deputations for coming. I received a written submission from one of the deputations. So if you have written submissions, feel free to share them after the meeting. So that's all for the item. Any other business? We have no any other business. Thank you very much.